Hi everyone, back again with fast recaps. In this video, I will recap one of a mystery film from 2022 titled The Invitation. Before we get to the storyline, don't forget to subscribe and like for more movie recaps and have a great day. The movie begins in a big mansion with Emmeline Alexander, who has restricted herself to a room away from food or water. When a butler with a heavy voice tries to persuade her to take a meal,
"You must eat something."
Emmeline responds that she can't do it anymore, revealing that something fishy is happening inside the big palace that the outside world is unaware of. After pushing the butler, Emmeline dashes outside and swirls a rope around her neck. To increase her body weight, she grabs a statue head and jumps from the height, resulting in her painful demise. The movie then switches to the present day, where we see a young woman named Evelyn, aka Evie, and her best friend, Grace, waitressing at Unlock Your Past's 10th anniversary. Unlock Your Past is a well-known company that allows people to learn about their long-lost family. It works by collecting the DNA from its clients to see if it matches someone else's. That's how people are able to know who they are and what their purpose is. After work, Grace gives Evie a company gift hamper, a wine bottle and a DNA test. Evie returns home and calms herself down by doing pottery and listening to her mom's voice, who died a few months ago from cancer.
But I'll always be with you.
While sitting on her bed, Evie goes through the company's website and decides to give a DNA test. After she mails her sample to the company, Evie gets a message which shows that she has a second cousin, Oliver L. Alexander, from England. As Oliver will be in New York for work this week, he wants to grab a coffee with his long-lost cousin. Grace advises her not to fall for it too soon because she thinks the website might be for unassuming organ donors. However, out of curiosity, Evie replies to Oliver and plans a get-together. At lunch, Evie meets his jolly and enthusiastic cousin Oliver, who works in real estate and is running the family business. When Oliver inquires about Evie's past, we learn that Evie's father died when she was 14. While talking to her cousin, Evie claims that her deceased mother always wanted her to go to England so she could learn more about the family history. Being a family news reporter and a talkative person, Oliver tells Evie how her great-grandmother, Emmeline, had an illicit affair with a black footman in 1925. She kept it a secret from everyone, including her future husband. Emmeline and the footman had a child, Evie's grandfather, who was later raised by the footman after he left the village. After telling the story, Oliver cannot keep the secret anymore and informs Evie that the whole Alexander family knows about her and is dying to meet her. Besides his three brothers, great-uncle Alfred and uncle Julius are waiting for Evie in England. Suddenly, Oliver realizes there is a wedding coming up for which there will be a massive celebration in a posh English countryside. He wants Evie to attend the wedding so she can see all the family members, including the groom, Martin Alexander, and his fiancée Cecile Deville. It seems like Evie wants to have a family again, but she doesn't have money to bear the expenses of flight and residence. However, Oliver informs her not to worry about the money and pack her bags to fulfill her mother's last wish.
You made it.
Hi.
Evie is received by Oliver at the airport and is taken to the new Carfax Abbey, where the Deville family owns a mansion. Alexander's family will be only staying the weekend for the festivities. Reaching the villa, Oliver heads inside to call the host while Evie engages in a conversation with the maids, Dia and Imogen. As Evie apologizes to the maids for accidentally breaking the glass, the head butler, Mr. Field, approaches and orders the maids to clean up the mess.
Yes, sir, of course.
Unaware of the fact that Evie is the guest, Mr. Field doesn't hesitate to talk harshly with her. Meanwhile, the lord of the manor, Walter Deville, reaches on time and saves the day from a total mess. In the very first meeting, it seems evident that Walter and Evie are attracted to each other. Later, Mr. Field takes Evie inside the mansion, adorned with beautiful statues and fancy paintings. Evie is allowed to roam around the manor except for the library, which is under renovation. Evie cannot believe she has a gigantic room and a lady's maid, Mrs. Swift, who will help her when needed. Mrs. Swift tells Evie about the present from the Maids of Honor. According to Mrs. Swift, 2 women will become the Maid of Honor in light of Deville's tradition. When Evie inquires about the pointed window grills, Mrs. Swift tells her that the local carnivorous bird, shrike, often becomes quite aggressive this season. That's why they had to make the grills pointed to keep shrikes away. Before leaving, Mrs. Swift tells Evie about the house's former lady, who was wise and a woman of depth. It seems like we have seen this lady before. This is Emmeline, Evie's great-grandmother, but why is she called the former lady of Deville's house? At night, while Evie is talking to Grace, Walter knocks at Evie's door and apologizes again for what happened earlier. It can be seen how Walter is trying his best to attract Evie, who is still unaware of the manor's dark secrets. Evie notices something weird for the first time while jogging when she sees Emmeline inside the mansion. After having a bad dream about Emmeline's head covered with blood, Evie wakes up in fear and witnesses as if something is sitting on the chair. Although the woman's hands are quite prominent, when Evie turns the light on, she learns that it is just her jogging outfit lying on the chair. To fetch a glass of water, Evie heads out of her room and sees Mr. Field instructing the maids about their cleaning routine. One of 5 women is selected to clean the locked library while the others are sent back to their quarters. Strange, right? As Evie is standing, we can see a dark shadow approaching her. But it disappears as Evie turns around her head. Mrs. Swift arrives and advises Evie not to stay outside her room for too long as it will be dangerous for her to walk in the dark. While Mrs. Swift talks to her, Evie sees the maid getting into the library alone. Evie returns to her room while we see the maid being attacked by something in the library. The following day, Uncle Alfredo raises a toast for their family's new member and wishes Evie the best of luck for her future. At the gathering, Oliver tells Evie how Walter seems quite charmed by her. After learning that Walter was asking Oliver about her whereabouts, Evie's confidence boosts up, and she falls for the manor's charming owner more and more. Meanwhile, 2 other maids are ordered to bring 1897 Vino Cru or wine from the cellar for the master of the house. Everything is going okay until the 2 are attacked by the same creature, resulting in their demise. On the other hand, Walter is trying his best to win over Evie, so he has placed a yellow gown inside her room so she can wear it to the party tonight. At night, Evie arrives at the party, where she is warmly welcomed by her new family. Later, the maids of honor, Victoria Klopstock and Lucy Billington, introduce themselves to Evie and extend their warm welcome. Unlike polite Lucy, Victoria is a brat who often plays with the sentiments of the people around her. At first, when Evie inquires how they know the bride, Lucy acts as if she doesn't know Cecile. However, after a second, she admits that Cecile is their family friend. While the Billingtons handle the DeVille's legal affairs, Klopstock manages their finances. On the other hand, the Alexander family helps finds the DeVille family incredible homes like the manor behind them. Meanwhile, Walter enters the party and invites Evie to dance, only to take his relationship with Evie to the next level. After the dance, he shows Evie his outdoor office, where the 2 share their first kiss. Walter's hard work and determination to be with Evie pay off, but someone is not quite happy with Walter kissing Evie. At night, Evie wakes up with an entity inside her room, crawling above her bed. In utter panic, Evie hides under the bed until Walter enters the room after hearing voices from her room. While cleaning the mess, Mrs. Swift tries to say something, but Walter appears and orders the lady to leave. After the incident, Walter decides to spend the night with Evie so she won't get scared. While talking to Evie, who is now asleep, Walter claims he wants someone who can accept him the way he is. It seems like Walter has something to hide that Evie is unaware of. The following day, Evie attends the spa day, where Victoria keeps teasing Evie for nothing. When Evie gets a wound during a manicure, Victoria gets out of the pool and licks the blood, revealing that it is not just Walter, but the whole manor is weird. In anger, Evie heads her way to the library, where she finds her file on the desk with her name and other information on it. As she is packing to leave, Walter approaches the room and inquires Evie about why she is acting strange. Evie knew that the whole situation in the mansion was too good to be true, but now she has evidence for it. Walter claims that he had to collect her information to allow her a stay at the manor. After Evie forgives Walter, both spend quality time in Evie's room until they are called for the festivity. While all the families are gathered in the hall, Evie inquires about the bride and groom. With a smirk, Walter gets up and announces his wedding to Evie. According to Walter, Evie is the one vital for the alliance between the families. She still cannot interpret what's happening. Before she can ask Walter about the situation, a maid is called into the hall and is slaughtered to fill the glass with blood. Everyone except Evie is laughing and enjoying the feast. After taking the glass of blood in his hand, Walter tells the story of how the ancestors of all 3 families made pact centuries ago. It turns out that Walter is a Dracula who was given 3 wives from 3 mortal families in exchange for wealth and prosperity for generations. In 1925, his bride Emmeline Alexander chose to leave the pact, compromising the reunion between the families. That once broken bond will now be renewed after Evie's and Walter's wedding, which will take place in the mansion the next day. In utter shock, Evie gets up and tries to leave the hall. However, being a fragile human, she can't do anything about it. While Evie is locked in the cellar room, Lucy tells her how she has been married to Walter, aka Master, for 100 years while Victoria has been living with him for 5 centuries. At the ceremony, Evie will be bound to the Master. But to make the bond permanent, you must first consume his blood, after which she will absorb his power and gain the strength of 100 men. However, to grant eternal life to everyone, Walter must have to drink Evie's blood. With Evie's sacrifice, not only all 3 families will live forever, but also Evie will enjoy her powers as long as Walter lives. Before leaving the cellar, Victoria locks Evie in a coffin, where she has to spend the whole night preparing herself for the wedding. After some time, Mrs. Swift sneaks into the cellar room and unlocks the coffin to help Evie escape. It turns out that Mrs. Swift is Emmeline's friend who couldn't do anything when her friend was dying. But now, she has the opportunity to help the only successor of her friend to escape the capture of a bloody monster. Mrs. Swift instructs Evie to run for her life and kill everyone in her way. Beheading or using fire are the only ways to kill them. After getting instructions from the maid, Evie dashes out of the manor and hides in the ice room, where she finds the dead bodies of all the maids. Before anyone can walk inside, Evie hides beneath the table. Later, Mr. Field enters the room with Mrs. Swift, whose head has now been stabbed into 2 halves. While Mr. Field is examining the room, Evie rushes out and locks the door with a wooden rod. Soon, she manages to escape the mansion, after which she heads her way to the town nearby. At first, the lady named Mina thinks that Evie is here to ask for money, but when she is told that the DeVille family is coming, the couple brings Evie inside the house to help her. Mina calls for help, but in reality, she is contacting DeVille to inform him about the girl. When Evie finds Mina's picture on the wall, she realizes that Mina was a maid in New Carax once and all her loyalties are towards her master. Evie tries to escape but gets knocked unconscious to the ground by Mina, who wants Evie to sacrifice her life for everyone in the town and the castle. Evie is taken back to the castle, where Walter tells her about the history of his kind, Strigoi, and the benefits of marrying him. Even after listening to the prophets, Evie likes to spit on Walter's face instead of marrying him. While Walter drinks the maid's blood, Evie is knocked unconscious out of disgust. People from all 3 families are gathered to sanctify the union between Walter and his new bride from the Alexander bloodline. After Evie is walked down the aisle by Uncle Alfredo, the ceremony begins, and both the bride and the groom read the vows. Now, it is time to exchange the blood. During the ceremony, Evie remembers Lucy's conversation in which she has told her about the strength of Walter's blood. Considering it as the only way to escape, Evie drinks the blood and becomes a Dracula like Walter and his 2 wives. After getting the power of 100 men, Evie steps up on the stage and knocks down all the candles, which ignite the fire. Evie takes out a big pointed needle from the shelf and stabs it in Dracula's heart, causing him to get weaker over time. While Evie tries to escape with the maid, she is stopped by Victoria, who otherwise will die after Walter's death.
It was just a flesh wound.
A fight starts between the 2, but Victoria gets the upper hand. Before she can kill Evie, soft-hearted Lucy approaches and instructs Victoria to let Evie go. The combat between Victoria and Lucy ends after the 2 get stuck in a metal rod and die. Before leaving, Evie is confronted by Mr. Field, but he also loses his life in the battle.
Asshole.
Walter tries to choke Evie but, in retaliation, loses his hand and is thrown into the fire. As Walter loses his powers and dies, Evie regains her human form and manages to leave the manor with a victory. The movie ends with Oliver planning to leave the town while we see Evie and Grace standing outside his office, getting ready to take revenge.